Tom, dude, we were eating dinner just a couple weeks ago, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing you blow up on YouTube because you are representing someone who's suing Logan Paul. How in the world did we get here?
Yeah, so the CryptoZoo victims actually have their own Discord server where they have been preserving evidence and conducting their own investigation for about a year. And as a practicing lawyer who also has a pretty big YouTube channel, I was actually invited by the mods of the server to conduct my own investigation and see if there was any sort of legal angle to take. And here we are.
I noticed in this case that there are numerous defendants. Logan Paul is obviously like the big name right now, but there are numerous people. Even one of them is his assistant. How do you decide who to sue in a case like this?
Sure. So we are suing CryptoZoo Incorporated, the entity, but because of the alleged fraud, misrepresentation, or deceptive trade practice, we are trying to pierce the corporate veil and also sue all of the co-founders and community managers who were involved in perpetuating this believed fraud individually as well.
I noticed that this was called Jams arbitration, which it looked a little different than a normal complaint that I look at for videos. Is this a different case? Is this a different situation for a typical lawsuit?
Yeah, sure. So for anybody who's unaware, arbitration is essentially like a private lawsuit. So instead of filing a case in a public court, you hire a private arbitrator. Now, normally when there are arbitration clauses in consumer contracts, they allege which arbitration service is going to handle said arbitration. Here, CryptoZoo Incorporated, their terms of service, say that we have to go file arbitration under JAMS, which is the Judicial and Mediation Service Company. It is a very popular arbitration service. That's all it is. So we filed our arbitration action through the JAMS system.
Makes sense. I also noticed that there's only one claimant in this case. Do you feel like there's more out there? Do you feel like there are more victims? Have you talked to more victims? Or is this just an example of you're only allowed to put one in a JAMS arbitration? I'm totally ignorant to this whole process.
So the CryptoZoo terms and conditions have two important clauses. The first is the arbitration clause, which we already talked about. We are forced to go to arbitration. The second one is a class action waiver, meaning we cannot group all of these claims together. So we have to file case after case after case after case. So when we filed this first complaint and it only had one person, well, that's because that's what we have to do. I can say that my law firm represents a significant number of CryptoZoo victims, and more arbitration actions will likely be filed in the near future.
I think this is the most important part here is you have Logan Paul, who is the influencer, who's the face, and who no doubt drove most of revenue, or however you want to determine, just the money brought into the project is all through Logan. He's claiming publicly that it was other people. And so I'm just curious about your opinion. Like, is there a way to determine, like, is it his fault? There was fraud committed. Is it all on him? Is it his company? Is there any type of discussion about where to place blame, or are you just trying to sue everyone involved?
Yeah, so on top of the concept of joint and several liability, there's another concept of the law called respondent superior, meaning you are responsible for the actions of your subordinates. We believe that Logan Paul was the founder. We believe he had 51% equity of the company. He is responsible for the actions of his fellow co-founders and his subordinates. So the fact that Logan Paul might say, hey, I'm not the one who rug pulled everybody. I'm not the one who sold the CryptoZoo token and made $6-7 million, whatever it was. I didn't make any money. That's irrelevant. He is still responsible for the actions of his community, of his co-founders, of his company.
I think that is what drove a lot of the response videos that you saw on YouTube over the last 2 weeks, is a lot of people just felt like he wasn't taking responsibility for his position. And I totally understand sometimes you feel in life that it's someone else's fault and you want to place all the blame on them. And it sounds like he was the leader of this operation and didn't take blame at all for people he might have hired. One of the big claims he makes is that he says publicly that he did not make any money. In a case like this where you're dealing with fraud or possible investments, him not making any money, is that important to this case at all, or do you feel like it is not relevant?
Yeah, so to me, the fact that Logan Paul didn't make any money on this project has absolutely no consequence on the legal liability at all. It's the consumers who lost money. At the end of the day, Logan Paul promised this project that just was never delivered. And on top of that, they perpetuated this lie. Like, this project, oh, it's just around the corner. Oh, Logan Paul's new commercial's about to drop. Or, oh, Logan's about to give the exposure for said project and it's going to go to the moon. It doesn't matter that he didn't make money. Consumers lost millions.
I'm not entirely in tune with this whole project and how much money was lost. Has your team been able to figure out kind of what type of numbers are we talking here with the CryptoZoo project? You mentioned earlier in this conversation something about a lot of victims, the possibility of a lot of victims. Do you have any idea on the total losses of the victims so far?
Yeah, so right now we do have a rough estimate of how much total loss we think there was. Now, obviously, we're just at the very beginning of this legal process, and we're probably going to have to hire experts to give us a more concise estimate. But as of right now, we believe consumers lost anywhere between $12 and $17 million in this CryptoZoo fiasco. Now, I do want to point out that this $12 to $17 million represents the amount of loss of consumers. This is different than trading volume.
That's so much money. And since we're dealing with fraud, which is a topic that is prominent on my channel, an interesting idea is, when does something become fraud? When is something a business or investment gone wrong? And because fraud is such an element to this case, at what point do you and your co-counsel determine, at what point is it fraud?
Yeah, sure. So I definitely think in this particular case that there are probably multiple instances of standalone fraud. For instance, I think you could make a very compelling case that launching Zoo token in secret and buying it up at an artificially low price before announcing it to the public, that's some level of fraud. Additionally, even if we take Logan Paul at his word, which is a big if, he continued to make material misrepresentations of the facts while he knew development wasn't going well. So again, Logan's narrative is, the developers kind of held the code hostage, or for whatever reason, the 1, 2, 3 development teams that they contracted to do this couldn't get the job done. Even if we take him at his word, which again is a big if, he still continued to perpetuate this narrative that CryptoZoo is going to be the next big thing. Oh, y'all just wait. This project's going to be great. Oh, Logan Paul's about to do a commercial about this. Or, oh, Logan Paul's about to talk about CryptoZoo update on his media. And these are things that just never happened. We have many victims who kept on investing in the project because of these material misrepresentations by Logan Paul and by his team.
You know what didn't help his case at all is there's a popular YouTube video going around right now where some kid created CryptoZoo essentially for free, and he made it in something like maybe 30 minutes or 3 hours. And then you look back at this project, and it took so long to create, and to this day, I'm still under the impression that it has not been created. I don't think that's a good look at all, where this project was promoted for a while, and then here we are a year later, and it still hasn't come to fruition. I'm just curious your opinions on that, on like just the timeline of this overall project.
Yeah, sure. So to me, this is kind of like the situation where if you're a person who's dating a lot of people and you keep on getting broken up with, maybe it's not them, maybe it's you. I definitely think that there's a strong case to believe that it wasn't necessarily the developers who were the issue with CryptoZoo, but rather Logan Paul and his team probably failing to give them either adequate direction or adequate pay. But again, even if we take Logan Paul at his word and it was the developers, which is a big if, he still perpetuated and kept this narrative alive that CryptoZoo was ready, that it was going to be the next big thing, that, oh, it's going to the moon, that I'm going to do all this media about it, and it just never happened.
I think his biggest mistake was just getting into the NFT space, period. Some of my recent videos are about crypto and NFTs, and it made me do some more research into just the last year and how crazy 2022 was, with all the money being lost, all of these coins and tokens losing 95% of their value. And it makes me wonder about this case specifically. So we're talking just about like investment and money, and clearly the victims lost money. Do you feel like there's anything else that you're claiming that is essentially at the base of any lawsuit, you need damages, right? So we clearly have monetary damages. Do you feel like there's any other damages that come along with these victims?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Now, generally for civil matters, the only remedy available is money damages. Now, with that said, we believe that we have a very strong case to ask for more than just what the physical economic damages of what these consumers lost. For instance, one of our causes of action is a violation of the Delaware Prohibited Trade Practices Act. We are citing this act because this arbitration does have to occur in Delaware, and we have to use Delaware law. Now, with that said, under this act, if we can prove that a defendant knowingly deceived their consumers and made material misrepresentations, knowing that they were material misrepresentations, or were so reckless that they should have known that they were material misrepresentations, then we are entitled to treble damages, 3 times damages. And that's just one example.
That feels like it could get really large. I know you're located in Texas, You just mentioned Delaware. Is this an instance where you need to be licensed in multiple states? How are you able to handle this case where the victims could be nationwide? I think this specific victim was located in Chicago, Illinois. Is there any type of like jurisdictional issues that you have to face?
Yeah, so with respect to jurisdictional issues, we're simply just abiding by CryptoZoo's terms and conditions. In those terms and conditions, it says that we have to go arbitrate. The venue for the arbitration is Delaware. So it's a private arbitration in Delaware. So when we file a case from somebody from Chicago, we file an arbitration in Delaware. We are simply just abiding by those terms and conditions. Now, with respect to me and my team, my law firm, we have lawyers licensed in Texas and Louisiana. That's me. I have a lawyer license in California, Missouri, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Indiana. So nobody from my law firm is from Delaware. Now, this being a private action, we could get this process started. But if we do need to retain local Delaware counsel, that's something that we will do. But again, this is just the very beginning, the initiation of this process, and we could initiate this process because this is a private arbitration. If we were going to go file this case in public Delaware court, we probably need to retain local counsel immediately.
I'm in litigation right now, and this process is way longer than I ever anticipated. For an arbitration deal like this, is this something that the victims can expect to either recoup or reach some type of settlement or have some type of finality with the case within a reasonable amount of time frame, or are we talking years?
Yeah, so I can't speak to that, Spencer. That's totally up to Logan Paul and the CryptoZoo team if they want to do this the hard way and litigate case after case after case after case after case and refuse to offer any reasonable compensation to the victims who are outstanding. It could very well take a long time. Again, that's not something that's up to me to control.
One thing that I found in my experience as a YouTuber who's talked about a lot of gurus in the internet marketing space, I have a lot of people reach out and they're so fearful of getting sued if they just either speak to an attorney or speak publicly about a bad experience they had. And so I'm going to let you speak about just this idea, this fear that a lot of people have of just like talking to an attorney about a bad experience, or if they feel like a victim or they feel like they signed a contract where it clearly says, so-and-so cannot sue. Is that true? Can someone actually come talk to you if they feel like they were a victim of something? You can say about Logan Paul's scam or anything else. Are they able to talk to an attorney?
Yeah, so I actually addressed something very similar to this when I did my video about the CryptoZoo legal process starting. Just because somebody has a term and condition in a contract does not necessarily mean that term or condition is enforceable. Now, with that said, arbitration provisions and class action waivers are often enforceable, but I certainly think that in the CryptoZoo terms and conditions, there are many clauses that are not enforceable, and that is that can be carried over to other contracts as well. You mentioned something in your question about some sort of clause that referenced not being able to sue. I'm fairly comfortable with saying that that clause is probably not enforceable. If I was a judge and somebody came to me with a clause that said, you are not able to sue, I would think that is unconscionable. That offends all notions of justice, in my opinion. So absolutely, even if you are on the fence and even if you signed a complete one-sided contract, go talk to a lawyer if you feel like you have been wronged. Oftentimes, lawyers may be able to help.
I think you answered all of my questions. I wish you nothing but the best of luck in your journey with taking on CryptoZoo. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks.